Welcome, curious minds. Strange, isn't it? The moment your life begins to rise, people stop asking what changed and start asking, who's helping you? They search for hidden mentors, secret connections, and invisible hands because believing in your own transformation feels impossible to them. Every step you take becomes another mystery they desperately try to solve. But the funniest part is that the answer has never been hidden. It has been standing beside you every morning, following you through every failure, every lesson, and every victory. They keep looking everywhere else, while the truth has been staring back at them all along. The first question people ask when your life begins to change is almost never, "What did you learn?" It is rarely, "What sacrifices did you make?" Instead, their minds race toward a different conclusion. They ask, "Who's helping you?" That question sounds innocent, but hidden beneath it is something much deeper. It reveals how difficult it is for many people to accept that ordinary consistency can create extraordinary results. They have spent so much time believing that success belongs to the lucky, the connected, or the naturally gifted, that the idea of someone quietly transforming themselves feels almost impossible. Most people are conditioned to search for shortcuts because shortcuts are easier to believe than discipline. They imagine secret meetings, influential mentors, powerful contacts, or invisible opportunities reserved for a chosen few. Their minds create stories because stories are more comfortable than reality. If they admit that your progress came from daily effort, uncomfortable choices, and relentless persistence, then they must also admit they had the same opportunity to begin. That realization carries responsibility, and responsibility is something many people unconsciously avoid. Think about how society celebrates dramatic moments while ignoring silent preparation. Everyone notices the athlete lifting a trophy, but almost nobody pays attention to the mornings spent training before sunrise. They admire the successful entrepreneur after the business grows, but ignore the years of uncertainty, rejection, and sleepless nights. They applaud confidence without asking how many moments of self-doubt had to be conquered before confidence became visible. They witness the outcome and invent explanations that erase the process. Human nature has always preferred visible miracles over invisible habits. Habits appear too ordinary to explain extraordinary outcomes. Reading a few pages every day seems insignificant until years have passed. Saving a little money consistently appears meaningless until financial freedom begins to emerge. Improving 1% each day feels too slow to matter until someone realizes the distance between where they started and where they now stand. Small actions rarely impress anyone in the moment, but compounded over time, they create transformations that seem unbelievable to those who never watched the journey. This is why people often underestimate quiet individuals. Silence makes others uncomfortable because it leaves room for imagination. When someone constantly announces their plans, the world feels informed. When someone works in silence, however, observers begin filling the gaps with assumptions. They invent hidden advantages because they never witnessed the private battles. They mistake privacy for secrecy and discipline for outside assistance. There's another reason people struggle to believe in self-made growth. Accepting your progress forces them to confront their own excuses. If someone with similar resources, similar obstacles, or even greater disadvantages can move forward, then the explanations they have relied on begin to lose their strength. It becomes easier to believe you received special help than to question the habits that have kept them standing still. The human mind naturally protects its existing beliefs, even when those beliefs quietly limit potential. Notice how often people focus on the final chapter while ignoring every page that came before it. They admire confidence, but overlook the embarrassment that built resilience. They respect wisdom without recognizing the mistakes that created understanding. They praise strength without imagining the moments when giving up felt easier than continuing. Every visible achievement has an invisible history, yet that history is usually ignored because it lacks excitement. Quiet repetition rarely becomes a headline, even though it is the foundation beneath every meaningful accomplishment. Comparison also distorts perception. Social media, conversations, and public appearances reveal polished moments rather than difficult realities. People compare your visible victories to their private struggles, creating the illusion that your progress happened effortlessly. They cannot see the lonely evenings spent learning, the repeated failures that sharpened your judgment, or the countless times you chose long-term growth over temporary comfort. Since they only witness the polished version, they assume something else must have accelerated your journey. The irony is that the greatest advantage often looks completely ordinary. Waking up when motivation disappears, keeping promises made to yourself, continuing after failure without announcing it to the world, learning from criticism instead of collapsing under it, choosing patience when immediate rewards are nowhere in sight. None of these actions attract applause, yet together they build a level of strength that outsiders mistake for hidden support. People also misunderstand confidence because they believe it appears first and action follows. In reality, confidence usually grows after repeated action. It is earned through evidence collected over hundreds of small victories. Every promise you keep to yourself becomes another brick in the foundation of self-belief. Every difficult decision strengthens your identity. Every challenge survived quietly changes the way you see yourself. Others notice confidence only after it becomes visible, never realizing it was slowly constructed through countless unseen moments. When someone repeatedly asks who is helping you, they may unknowingly reveal more about their own beliefs than about your reality. They are exposing a mindset that struggles to recognize the extraordinary power hidden inside consistent effort. They have been taught to search outside themselves for every answer, every opportunity, and every explanation, making it difficult to imagine that the greatest force behind lasting transformation could have been quietly growing within an ordinary person all along. Once people convince themselves that someone must be helping you, they begin searching in every direction except the one that matters most. They examine your friendships, question your connections, analyze your opportunities, and even speculate about conversations they were never part of. They assume there must be a hidden mentor, a powerful supporter, or an invisible guide quietly pulling the strings behind your success. Yet the one companion that has been present through every setback, every lesson, every failure, and every breakthrough is the one they overlook completely. The most powerful ally a person can ever possess is not another individual. It is the relationship they build with their own mind. Every external advantage has limits, but the way you think determines how you respond to every situation life presents. Two people can experience the same obstacle, yet one sees a reason to quit while the other sees an opportunity to grow. The difference is rarely found in circumstances. It is found in perspective. Most people underestimate the conversations that happen in silence. They believe success is shaped by public actions, while ignoring the private dialogue that controls those actions. Every morning, your mind asks questions before the world ever speaks to you. Will you stay comfortable, or will you challenge yourself? Will you react emotionally, or will you remain focused? Will you blame circumstances, or will you accept responsibility? Those invisible conversations quietly decide the direction of your entire day. People who transform their lives eventually discover that they cannot always control what happens around them, but they can always train how they respond. That realization changes everything. Instead of wasting energy complaining about situations beyond their control, they invest their attention where it produces results. They strengthen discipline instead of excuses. They build patience instead of panic. They choose learning instead of resentment. These decisions appear small in isolation, yet over months and years, they reshape an entire identity. This is why outsiders often misunderstand steady progress. They see someone becoming calmer under pressure and assume confidence appeared overnight. They notice better decisions without seeing the countless mistakes that refine judgment. They witness emotional control without realizing how many emotional storms had to be survived before peace became natural. What looks effortless from the outside is often the product of thousands of invisible internal battles. The human mind behaves much like a garden. Whatever receives consistent attention begins to grow. Feed fear every day and fear becomes stronger. Feed doubt and doubt begins directing your choices. Feed discipline, curiosity, resilience, and gratitude. And those qualities gradually become part of your character. Most people never intentionally decide what they are cultivating, which is why their thoughts often become reactions instead of deliberate choices. The invisible ally that changes lives is self-awareness. Without it, people drift through life repeating the same habits while expecting different outcomes. With it, every mistake becomes information instead of failure. Every setback becomes a lesson instead of a permanent identity. Self-awareness allows you to observe your weaknesses without being controlled by them. It gives you the ability to interrupt destructive patterns before they define your future. There is a reason many successful people spend more time improving themselves than proving themselves. They understand that lasting change is created internally before it becomes visible externally. Chasing approval produces temporary motivation because approval depends on other people. Building inner discipline creates lasting momentum because it depends on personal choices repeated consistently over time. One source of strength disappears when criticism arrives. The other grows stronger because criticism becomes another opportunity to improve. Many people spend years searching for someone to believe in them before giving themselves permission to grow. They wait for encouragement, recognition, or perfect timing. They postpone action until confidence appears, never realizing confidence is earned through action itself. The greatest shift occurs when a person stops waiting for rescue and begins becoming the person they have been waiting for all along. That transformation is rarely dramatic. It begins with one promise kept when no one is watching, one difficult decision made despite fear, one extra hour spent learning instead of complaining, one refusal to surrender after failure. Those moments seem insignificant because they do not receive applause, yet they quietly strengthen the only companion that remains with you throughout your entire life, your own character. Ironically, the people searching for your secret helper often overlook the evidence standing directly in front of them. Every habit you repeated, every distraction you resisted, every uncomfortable choice you embraced, and every lesson you accepted became another piece of the foundation beneath your progress. They mistake invisible preparation for invisible assistance because they cannot imagine that someone could become powerful simply by mastering themselves. Real transformation does not begin when the world finally notices your success. It begins long before that, in moments when no audience exists, no recognition is guaranteed, and no reward is immediate. It grows through repeated choices that slowly reshape your thinking until your mind becomes the strongest ally you have ever known. While others continue searching for mysterious people working behind the scenes, they never realize the greatest force guiding every step has been the voice inside you that refused to surrender, refused to settle, and refused to become anything less than the person you decided to create. There is something almost invisible about quiet discipline. It rarely announces itself, never demands attention, and does not ask anyone for recognition. Because it works in silence, people often fail to notice it until the results become impossible to ignore. Then, almost instantly, the questions begin. Who taught you this? Who opened those doors? Who's helping you? They struggle to believe that a series of ordinary decisions, repeated every single day, could produce extraordinary outcomes. To them, the results seem too impressive to have been built by something as simple as consistency. The truth is that discipline has a strange way of disguising itself. While others are searching for dramatic breakthroughs, disciplined people are quietly improving by fractions. One extra chapter read before sleeping. One more workout when motivation disappears. One difficult conversation instead of avoiding conflict. One thoughtful decision instead of an emotional reaction. None of these actions appear remarkable on their own. In fact, most people would dismiss them as too small to matter. Yet those tiny choices accumulate like drops of water filling a reservoir. Eventually, what looked insignificant becomes impossible to ignore. Human beings are naturally attracted to dramatic stories. We love sudden success, overnight fame, unexpected victories, and miraculous transformations. These stories are exciting because they compress years of effort into a single memorable moment. What gets lost is everything that happened before the applause, the endless repetitions, the uncomfortable routines, the moments when quitting would have been easier than continuing. Quiet discipline never receives the spotlight because it unfolds too slowly for most people to appreciate. This creates a dangerous illusion. When people only see the final result, they assume something extraordinary must have happened behind the scenes. They invent hidden opportunities because they never witnessed the hidden effort. They believe there must have been powerful connections because they never saw the countless hours spent developing skills. They imagine secret advantages because they cannot see the ordinary decisions repeated over months and years. Discipline also changes the way a person thinks. At first, every difficult task feels like a battle against comfort. Your mind argues for delay, distraction, and convenience. It promises that tomorrow will be a better time to begin. But every time you choose action instead of excuses, something shifts. The next decision becomes slightly easier. Then another. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like punishment and starts becoming part of your identity. You no longer force yourself to do the difficult thing because it has become natural. Outsiders mistake that consistency for talent, never realizing it was built one decision at a time. There is a quiet confidence that grows from keeping promises to yourself. Every commitment honored strengthens trust in your own abilities. Every challenge completed reminds you that discomfort is temporary. Over time, your relationship with difficulty changes completely. Problems stop appearing as barriers and begin looking like opportunities to prove who you have become. This inner confidence cannot be borrowed, purchased, or inherited. It is earned through repeated action when nobody else is paying attention. People often confuse confidence with personality. They assume some individuals were simply born fearless. In reality, confidence is usually the result of accumulated evidence. Every time you overcome fear, your mind remembers it. Every obstacle survived becomes proof that you are capable of handling future challenges. Slowly, uncertainty loses its power because experience replaces imagination. You stop fearing what might happen because you have already survived so much that once seemed impossible. Quiet discipline also protects people from emotional extremes. Those who rely only on motivation become trapped by their feelings. They work when inspired and stop when enthusiasm fades. Discipline removes that dependency. It teaches you to act according to your values instead of your emotions. Some days will feel exciting, while others will feel exhausting. The disciplined person continues regardless because their commitment is stronger than their mood. This stability often appears mysterious to those who have never developed it themselves. Another reason discipline creates the illusion of secret help is that its effects are delayed. People expect immediate rewards, so they abandon good habits before those habits have time to produce visible results. They exercise for a week and expect transformation. They read for a month and expect mastery. They save money briefly and expect financial freedom. When instant results fail to appear, they quit. Then they watch someone who stayed consistent for years and assume external assistance must explain the difference. The irony is that discipline remains invisible precisely because it is so ordinary. There's nothing glamorous about repeating healthy habits, refining skills, managing emotions, or honoring commitments every single day. Those actions rarely become exciting stories, yet they quietly reshape a person's future. While others chase dramatic solutions, disciplined individuals continue placing one brick after another until an entire foundation has been built beneath them. Eventually, the distance between consistent effort and inconsistent effort becomes impossible to hide. The disciplined individual appears calm where others panic, prepared where others hesitate, and resilient where others collapse. Observers see only the final version and begin searching for hidden explanations. They assume unseen allies must exist because accepting the truth would require admitting that the greatest advantage was never a secret connection, extraordinary luck, or mysterious support. It was the quiet discipline that kept moving forward long after excitement disappeared, creating results so powerful that people mistook unwavering consistency for an invisible hand guiding every step. The moment people can no longer explain your growth, something interesting begins to happen inside their minds. Instead of becoming curious about your habits, they become suspicious of your success. Instead of asking what you changed, they begin questioning who changed it for you. This reaction is not always rooted in hatred. More often, it is a reflection of human psychology. When reality challenges long-held beliefs, the mind instinctively searches for explanations that protect its existing view of the world. That is where projection, doubt, and hidden envy quietly begin shaping the story people tell themselves. Projection is one of the most subtle habits people develop without realizing it. They assume others think, act, and make decisions the same way they would. If they believe success requires manipulation, they assume everyone manipulates. If they would rely on connections to get ahead, they expect others to do the same. If they would hide shortcuts, they imagine you must also be hiding them. They are not necessarily describing your reality. They are revealing their own mindset. What they accuse others of often reflects the beliefs they carry within themselves. This is why genuine transformation confuses people who have never experienced it. They cannot imagine changing through discipline because they have never committed to it long enough to witness its effects. They measure your progress using the limits of their own experience. If they cannot picture themselves accomplishing what you have accomplished, they conclude there must be another explanation. The mind always prefers familiar conclusions over uncomfortable possibilities. Doubt also serves as a psychological shield. Believing your success came from outside help allows people to protect the stories they tell themselves about why they remain where they are. If they admitted that your progress resulted from consistent effort, they would have to question every excuse they have repeated for years. That realization feels threatening because it places responsibility back into their own hands. It becomes emotionally easier to doubt your journey than to examine their own. Hidden envy rarely announces itself openly. It does not always appear as anger or criticism. Sometimes it disguises itself as endless questions, sarcastic compliments, or subtle attempts to minimize your achievements. Someone might say, "You just got lucky," or "You probably knew the right people," or "Things always seem to work out for you." On the surface, these statements sound harmless. Beneath them lies an unwillingness to acknowledge the unseen effort that made your progress possible. Envy becomes especially powerful when your success challenges someone's identity. Imagine two people who once lived with similar habits, similar routines, and similar dreams. One gradually commits to change while the other remains comfortable. As time passes, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Every achievement of the growing individual silently reminds the other person of choices they avoided making. Without saying a single word, your progress becomes evidence that change was always possible. That silent reminder can be difficult for some people to accept. The human ego constantly works to preserve a sense of consistency. It wants to believe that its current choices are reasonable and justified. Whenever someone nearby proves that greater growth was possible under similar circumstances, the ego feels challenged. Rather than admitting its limitations, it often creates stories that restore comfort. It whispers that you had better opportunities, secret guidance, unusual luck, or invisible support. Those explanations protect pride while avoiding personal accountability. Another fascinating aspect of projection is that people often criticize qualities they secretly wish they possessed. Confidence appears arrogant to those who fear expressing themselves. Discipline appears obsessive to those who struggle with consistency. Independence appears cold to those who depend heavily on approval. Emotional stability appears suspicious to those controlled by constant reactions. Instead of recognizing these qualities as strengths developed over time, they redefine them in ways that make them easier to dismiss. This psychological pattern extends beyond individuals. Entire groups sometimes resist accepting someone's growth because it disrupts familiar roles. Families, friends, workplaces, and communities unconsciously assign identities to people. One person is always the funny one, another is always the quiet one, another is always the unsuccessful one. When someone suddenly begins evolving beyond the role others assign to them, discomfort arises. Instead of updating their perception, many people search for reasons to explain away the transformation. They cling to the old version because it feels familiar. Ironically, the more calmly you handle criticism, the more confused some people become. They expect defensiveness because they believe accusations would expose hidden truths. When you remain composed, their uncertainty grows. They continue searching for evidence because they cannot reconcile your behavior with the story they have created in their minds. The absence of drama forces them to invent even more complicated explanations. Real growth has a remarkable ability to expose the beliefs people carry about themselves. Your discipline reminds others of abandoned goals. Your patience highlights their impulsiveness. Your resilience reflects the moments they surrendered too soon. None of this happens because you intended to compete with anyone. It happens because genuine transformation naturally creates contrast. Those prepared to learn become inspired. Those unwilling to change often become skeptical. The greatest misunderstanding is that these reactions are actually about you. In many cases, they are not. They are reflections of internal struggles, unchallenged assumptions, and quiet insecurities that existed long before your life began to change. While people continue projecting their doubts, protecting their excuses, and searching for invisible explanations, they fail to recognize that the real mystery was never your success itself, but the beliefs inside their own minds that prevented them from seeing how ordinary choices could quietly create extraordinary lives. There comes a point in every meaningful transformation when you realize the greatest advantage you could ever possess is not something another person can give you. It is something you build within yourself. While many people spend years chasing powerful connections, waiting for perfect opportunities, or hoping someone influential will notice them, they overlook the one advantage that remains available every single day. The ability to shape your own character, your own habits, and your own mindset quietly becomes a force more reliable than any temporary support the outside world could provide. Most people are trained to believe success arrives from external sources. They are taught to wait for permission, recognition, or ideal circumstances before fully committing themselves. They convince themselves that the right mentor, the right environment, or the right relationship will finally unlock their potential. Although guidance and opportunities can certainly help, they cannot replace the responsibility of personal growth. No mentor can develop discipline for you. No connection can think on your behalf. No opportunity can consistently save someone who refuses to prepare. The strongest people understand that self-reliance does not mean refusing help. It means never becoming dependent on help to continue moving forward. They appreciate advice without surrendering responsibility. They welcome support without expecting rescue. Every lesson they receive becomes another tool, but they remain the ones who choose whether those tools are used. This mindset creates freedom because progress no longer depends entirely on circumstances outside their control. One of the quietest forms of power is becoming emotionally independent. Many people unknowingly hand control of their lives to the opinions of others. Their confidence rises with compliments and falls with criticism. Their motivation depends on encouragement. Their happiness depends on approval. As long as someone else controls your emotional state, they also influence your decisions. Real strength begins when your values become stronger than public opinion. You stop asking whether everyone understands your journey and start asking whether your actions align with the person you are trying to become. Developing this kind of independence requires patience because the mind naturally seeks comfort. It wants reassurance before action. It wants certainty before commitment. It wants guarantees before taking risks. Yet life rarely provides guarantees. Growth belongs to those willing to move despite uncertainty. Every time you choose action instead of hesitation, you strengthen your ability to trust yourself. Every promise you keep becomes another reminder that your future is shaped more by your decisions than by your doubts. People often mistake independence for isolation, but they are not the same. Isolation rejects relationships. Independence simply refuses to let relationships define personal worth. Independent individuals still care deeply about others, collaborate effectively, and value meaningful connections. The difference is that they no longer expect other people to complete what only they can build within themselves. Their identity does not disappear when circumstances change because it has been rooted in principles rather than approval. Another remarkable advantage comes from becoming adaptable. Life constantly changes, and those who depend entirely on one source of security become vulnerable whenever that source disappears. Careers shift, markets change, friendships evolve. Unexpected challenges arrive without warning. A person who has developed resilience, curiosity, and emotional stability carries those qualities into every new environment. Instead of fearing change, they become capable of growing through it. Their greatest resource travels with them because it exists within their character rather than outside it. There's also tremendous power in becoming your own source of accountability. Waiting for someone else to remind you of your goals creates inconsistency. Depending on external pressure means your effort disappears whenever that pressure fades. Self-accountability changes this completely. You begin measuring success by whether you honored your commitments rather than whether someone noticed them. Quietly meeting your own standards creates a confidence that public praise can never replace. This inner advantage becomes especially visible during difficult seasons. When failure arrives, some people immediately search for someone to blame. Others begin searching for solutions. The difference is not intelligence or luck, it is ownership. Those who accept responsibility gain the ability to improve, because responsibility always carries the possibility of change. Blame, on the other hand, leaves people waiting for circumstances to improve before their lives can improve. Ironically, becoming your own greatest advantage often goes unnoticed by the world. People rarely witness the private choices that shape strong character. They do not see the mornings when you choose discipline over comfort. They do not hear the conversations where you challenge your own excuses. They cannot measure the countless moments when you decide to respond with patience instead of anger or persistence instead of surrender. These victories happen in silence, making them invisible to everyone except the person becoming stronger because of them. As this transformation continues, something unexpected happens. The questions people ask begin to change. They stop wondering why temporary setbacks no longer break your confidence. They become curious about why criticism no longer distracts you. They struggle to understand why uncertainty no longer controls your decisions. Unable to see the years of inner work behind your calmness, they search for hidden explanations. They imagine invisible supporters, secret guidance, or extraordinary luck, because accepting the truth would require acknowledging that the greatest advantage was never another person standing beside you, but the person you deliberately became through thousands of quiet decisions that slowly turned self-mastery into the strongest ally you would ever possess. Every mystery eventually reaches a moment where the truth can no longer remain hidden. For a long time, people watch your progress from a distance, convinced that someone extraordinary must be working behind the scenes. They search for secret mentors, powerful connections, hidden opportunities, and invisible advantages. They build theories because the reality appears too simple to satisfy them. Surely, they think, no one could change this much through ordinary choices alone. Yet the longer they observe, the more difficult it becomes to ignore a single, undeniable fact. Every explanation they invent slowly begins to collapse under the weight of consistency. The greatest reveal is rarely dramatic. It does not happen during a public celebration or in front of an applauding audience. Instead, it unfolds quietly over time. People notice that your attitude remains steady, even when circumstances become difficult. They realize your confidence survives criticism. They watch setbacks slow you down without stopping you. They see failures become lessons instead of excuses. Eventually, they begin to understand that these qualities cannot be borrowed from another person. They have to be built from within. Many people expect hidden support to disappear when pressure increases. They assume that if someone else is responsible for your strength, that strength will vanish the moment life becomes challenging. But something unexpected happens. Difficult seasons reveal even greater resilience. Uncertainty exposes deeper patience. Obstacles uncover stronger determination. Instead of collapsing, you continue adapting. That is when observers begin questioning their original assumptions. If your progress depended entirely on outside help, why does your character become stronger every time life becomes harder? There is a powerful difference between borrowed confidence and earned confidence. Borrowed confidence depends on approval, status, or constant reassurance. Remove those things, and uncertainty quickly returns. Earned confidence comes from experience. It is built through promises kept, fears confronted, failures survived, and lessons learned. Every challenge adds another layer to that foundation. Eventually, confidence no longer depends on circumstances because it has become part of who you are. The people around you slowly begin recognizing patterns they ignored before. They remember how often you remained committed when excitement disappeared. They recall the times you quietly continued while others gave up. They realize you were improving long before anyone noticed the results. Suddenly, the answer they had been searching for starts becoming obvious. The person helping you was never hidden. They simply overlooked the countless invisible decisions that shaped your identity. Ironically, many people resist this realization at first because it challenges everything they believed about success. They were convinced Extraordinary lives required extraordinary secrets. Accepting that ordinary discipline created extraordinary outcomes forces them to reconsider their own habits. They must ask themselves uncomfortable questions. What if the opportunity to grow had always been available? What if consistency mattered more than talent? What if responsibility carried more power than excuses? Those questions become impossible to ignore once your journey stands as living evidence. Another remarkable change begins taking place. The same people who once doubted you start asking for advice. Those who questioned your progress become curious about your routines. The conversations shift from suspicion to fascination. Instead of asking who is helping you, they begin asking how you think, how you stay focused, and how you remain calm under pressure. They finally recognize that your greatest advantage was never hidden behind closed doors. It was quietly developing through everyday decisions they dismissed as insignificant. This realization also changes the way you see yourself. You stop waiting for validation because you understand that your progress never depended on applause. You stop chasing approval because your identity has become rooted in action rather than opinion. Criticism loses much of its power because you know the truth behind your own journey. Praise becomes enjoyable but no longer necessary. Doubt from others becomes background noise rather than a barrier. The person you spent years building privately becomes stronger than any label the outside world attempts to place upon you. One of the most satisfying moments in personal growth is recognizing that the answer people searched for was never complicated. It was present every time you chose discipline over comfort, every time you learned instead of complained, every time you stood back up after failure, every time you refused to let temporary emotions decide permanent outcomes. Those ordinary moments combined into something extraordinary, not because each individual choice was dramatic, but because they were repeated with unwavering consistency. The world often celebrates visible victories while overlooking invisible preparation. Yet those who pay close attention eventually discover that preparation is where true transformation begins. Success is not a mysterious gift delivered to a fortunate few. It is the natural consequence of repeated thoughts, repeated habits, repeated actions, and repeated decisions aligned with a meaningful purpose. Once that truth becomes undeniable, the mystery disappears. In the end, the question that followed you for so long finally answers itself. People stop searching for secret allies because they can no longer deny what has been standing in front of them the entire time. The strength they admired, the confidence they questioned, the resilience they could not explain, and the growth they struggled to understand all pointed toward one simple reality. The closest helper was never a hidden mentor, an influential connection, or an invisible force. It was the person who looked back at you every single morning, accepted responsibility for every choice, refused to surrender to comfort, and patiently transformed an ordinary life into something extraordinary through the quiet power of becoming the very ally you had been searching for all along.